April 2nd, 1944. 21,000 feet above the snow-covered Austrian city of Steyr, the thin morning air vibrates with the roar of 4 Pratt & Whitney engines. Inside the plexiglass nose of a B-24 Liberator named Best Guido, Captain Jack Horner bends over his Norden bomb sight. His job is simple in theory: find the target, lock the crosshairs, and release. In reality, it is chaos. Outside, black flowers of 88 and 128 millimeter flak detonate so thick, as one gunner will later say, "You could just get out and walk on it." Luftwaffe fighters slash through the formation, Me-109 Gustavs, FW-190s, and twin-engine Me-110s firing rockets from the rear, each burst shaking the bomber like a giant's fist. Horner steadies his breathing. Somewhere below lies the Daimler-Puch aircraft manufacturing plant, a key cog in Hitler's war machine and today's primary target. But the target vanishes. A stray cumulus cloud drifts across the crosshairs. Then a flash of silver jolts his eye. A group of B-17 flying fortresses, off course and directly beneath his bomb run. Dropping now would mean annihilating fellow Americans. Horner thumbs the intercom and calls the only words that can avert catastrophe: "No drop." In the left seat cockpit, Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth A. mission commander and group leader of the 455 bomb group, the Vulgar Vultures, absorbs the news. His 30-plus Liberators have braved hundreds of miles from southern Italy, all the way over Yugoslavia and the Alps, through waves of interceptors and flak belts, only to find their primary target screened and their bomb run blocked. Kuhl has seconds to act. A second pass would mean circling back through the heaviest flak zone in Austria, inviting more German fighters. The designated secondary target is miles off course and of low strategic value. Either option wastes lives and gasoline. Then a memory sparks. At the pre-flight intelligence briefing, a small detail caught his attention. The Steyr Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing works, a sprawling complex just 1 minute's flight north on course 330, and the latest weather confirmed clear sky above it. Ball bearings are the unseen blood of the Nazi war economy. No bearings, no engines. No engines, no Luftwaffe. Kuhl grabs the mic and speaks with the calm of a man who understands urgency. "Come to course 330. We're bombing the ball-bearing plant." The order snaps through every B-24 interphone. Bomb bays stay open. Gunners swing their twin 50 caliber Brownings as the big formation banks left, lining up on a new target that, if destroyed, could choke off Germany's ability to build aircraft at the very moment Allied armies prepare to storm France. The drama unfolding above Steyr is a single heartbeat inside a much larger design. Operation Pointblank, the Allied strategy to break the Luftwaffe before D-Day. Since July 1943, British and American bombers had battered Germany's aircraft industry. Big Week, February 20th to 25th, 1944, forced Nazi planners to scatter their factories and starve pilot training with chronic fuel shortages. By April 1st, however, control of the American heavy bomber fleets, both the 8th Air Force in England and the 15th in Italy, passed to General Dwight D. Eisenhower's Supreme Headquarters. Their new primary mission: smash French rail hubs and isolate Normandy for the coming invasion. But when the weather opened a window into the Reich, Major General Nathan F. Twining's 15th Air Force still struck deep. Steyr, with its aircraft and bearing plants, was too valuable to ignore. Above the Austrian Alps, 100 bombers pivot on a single voice command. In the nose of Best Guido, Jack Horner resets his bomb sight, ignoring the flak bursts hammering the sky. The mission is no longer Daimler-Puch. It is the Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing plant. One canceled drop, one lightning-fast decision, and the course of an air campaign, and perhaps the timetable of the Allied invasion, has shifted. Long before the bomb bays opened over Austria, the men who would become the 455 bomb group, heavy were strangers scattered across the American Southwest. Their story began on July 8, 1943, at Clovis Army Air Base, New Mexico. There were no aircraft waiting, only a headquarters framework and 4 empty squadrons. The 741st, 742nd, and 743rd Bombardment Squadrons, all under a new name that few could yet pronounce with pride, the 455th Bomb Group. Through that summer and autumn, the learning curve was as steep as the climb of a Liberator on full power. Crews drilled endlessly over New Mexico, Florida, and Utah, mastering navigation, formation flying, and emergency procedures. Each squadron was authorized 16 of the big consolidated B-24 Liberators, later trimmed to 12. Pilots wrestled with the controls of a machine famous for both its power and its stubbornness. At the center stood Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth A. Cool, a seasoned combat flyer fresh from Europe and North Africa with the 8th Air Force's 93rd Bomb Group. Cool was all business, a stickler for tight formations and precision drills. For newly minted pilots, that discipline was unnerving. Lieutenant John Smittle of the 743rd Squadron nicknamed his own B-24 the Beast. He remembered every takeoff as an athletic contest. All limbs were in motion at one time, left arm hauling and twisting, right hand sawing the throttle, feet jamming the rudder back and forth, mouth spouting curses, and oh yes, the sweat pouring off my forehead and into my eyes. Months of repetition gradually forged muscle memory and a calm under pressure that would later save lives over Europe. By late 1943, the 455th received 64 brand new B-24H Liberators. With a 110-foot wingspan, 67-foot length, and 18-foot height, each bomber carried 4 Pratt & Whitney R-183065 engines, each rated at 1,200 horsepower. Empty, they weighed 36,000 pounds. Loaded for war, up to 65,000 pounds. Top speed reached 290 miles per hour with a service ceiling of 28,000 feet and a maximum range of about 2,100 miles, enough to reach deep into Austria or southern Germany from Italy. The B-24's weapons were equally formidable. 10.50 caliber Browning machine guns, electrically powered twin-gun turrets in the nose, top, belly, and tail, plus flexible singles at each waist window. Bomb bays could carry 5,000 pounds of bombs, though crews often traded payload for extra fuel on long missions. Within the wider USAAF, arguments about B-17 versus B-24 filled mess tents and airfields. The Flying Fortress could absorb incredible punishment and still limp home. The Liberator was faster and could carry a heavier bomb load, but demanded constant attention from its pilots. For the 455th, choice never entered the equation. "You flew what you were given," one gunner later said, "and you learned to make it work." By October 1943, the 455th shifted to Langley Field, Virginia, for final staging and then split into 2 echelons. One would ferry the brand new Liberators across the Atlantic, the other would sail by troop ship to North Africa. They numbered roughly 2,260 officers and enlisted men, including nearly 1,000 aircrew. Before departure, the group adopted a name that would travel with them into combat: the Vulgar Vultures. The emblem, designed with Walt Disney Studios, showed a sweating buzzard clutching a demolition bomb, a badge soon sewn to flight jackets and painted on bomber noses. January 1944 brought the men to San Giovanni Airfield near Foggia, Italy, or what passed for an airfield. 2 parallel 6,000-foot runways were still unfinished. The air echelon cooled its heels at a staging base in Algeria for nearly 3 weeks while engineers fought mud and rain to make the field marginally usable. Those who came by sea found little comfort. A few ancient stone buildings like the castle for offices and olive groves for everything else. Troops pitched pup tents, dug slit trenches, and braved a winter of cold rain and ankle-deep muck. Tail gunner Henry B. Everhart recalled, "A wet, penetrating cold, with rains that produced a very slippery mud that was like ice." Food was no consolation. Spam, Vienna sausages, powdered eggs, stewed prunes, heated in garbage cans. Lieutenant Ernest F. Budd. Turner described meals eaten wherever a man could find a dry patch of ground and mess kits rinsed in drums of tepid water. Gradually, the camp improved. 6-man tents replaced the leaky pup tents. Mess tents with picnic tables appeared. They even built a crude shower, 10-gallon barrels warmed by wood fires, linked to pipes with pull chains for a few precious minutes of hot water. By mid-February 1944, the 455th Bomb Group, now fully manned and equipped with its B-24 Liberators, was finally ready for combat. But southern Italy's winter skies had other plans. Days of heavy rain and low ceilings kept the vulgar vultures grounded. Their first planned strike on February 16th never left the ground. Heavy clouds forced Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth A to scrub the mission after 44 aircraft had already formed. Frustration built, but the delay proved valuable. Each day on the ground meant more gunnery drills, more formation practice, and a few more lessons in staying alive. When the weather finally broke, the 455th began a steady rhythm of action. Over the closing weeks of February and March, the group completed 17 small-scale raids, many aimed at supporting Allied troops clinging to their bridgehead at Anzio. These early missions, though shorter and less publicized than deep strikes into Germany, hardened the crews. They learned to keep tight formations under fire, to watch the sun angles for enemy fighters, and to trust the constant rattle of their 10.50 caliber Brownings. Each sortie was another step toward the brutal gauntlet that awaited them over Austria. By late March, intelligence officers at Major General Nathan F. Twining's 15th Air Force headquarters sensed that better weather and longer days would open the door to larger strategic strikes. High on their list stood Steyr, a compact Austrian industrial city 90 miles west of Vienna. Steyr housed multiple aviation-related plants, including the Daimler-Puch aircraft factory and the massive Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing works, both essential to keeping the Luftwaffe in the air. Allied planners knew that ball bearings were the hidden heartbeat of the German war machine. Without them, engines seized and production lines stalled. On April 1st, Twining approved mission number 18, the 15th largest to date. The order called for 530 heavy bombers, 432 B-17 and B-24s to strike the Daimler-Puch and Walzlagerwerke plants in Steyr, and 98 more to create diversions by bombing marshalling yards near Bihać and Brod in Yugoslavia. The plan required mathematical precision. B-17, flying fortresses, slower in cruise, would lift off first, assemble, and bomb ahead of schedule. The faster B-24 Liberators, including the 455th, would follow, arriving over Steyr just as the fortresses cleared the airspace. More than 150 escort fighters, a mix of P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings, with some squadrons already flying the long-range P-51 Mustang, would protect the bomber streams. To cover the entire 1,000-mile round trip, fighter units choreographed a relay of rendezvous points over the Adriatic, along the Yugoslavian coast, and finally in the lethal airspace above Austria. Additional escort groups were to sweep in at the final bomb run, where enemy contact was certain. At San Giovanni Airfield, the order crackled down through the 15th Air Force and 304th Bomb Wing to the 455th's operation staff. Kuhl's team worked late into the night drafting the field order, detailing every element: takeoff times, radio frequencies, bomb loads, ammunition counts, expected weather, and emergency procedures. Crews were shaken awake well before dawn on April 2nd. After a quick mess-line breakfast, they packed into the briefing hut as wall maps and chalkboards revealed the long arc of their flight. Kuhl himself closed the session. "This one's for me," he said, announcing he would pilot the lead ship. For a group that trusted the old man's cool judgment, morale soared. From briefing to equipment tent, the men followed a practiced routine. Heavy sheepskin-lined leather suits and parachute harnesses came first. Intelligence officers issued escape kits: a small plastic box with a map, a $5 gold coin, a fishing hook and line, a tiny compass, and a miniature hacksaw, items that might mean the difference between capture and freedom. Some crewmen added electrically heated suits and boots, though many distrusted them. Shorts and burns were common. Others slung spare shoes around their necks in case they had to walk out of enemy territory. Flak jackets and steel helmets waited at the planes, but space inside a B-24 was tight. Each man chose between protection and mobility. At 0648 hours, station time arrived. every man aboard ready. Moments later, the first Pratt and Whitney engines thundered awake across San Giovanni. Kuhl's lead aircraft bore his favorite phrase in bold letters, "Best Wedo." At 0755, 35 B-24s of the 455th Bomb Group clawed into the pale Italian morning. One aircraft soon turned back with a fuel leak. The remaining ships climbed into the forming combat box, the tight defensive pattern that multiplied their gunners' firepower and turned individual planes into a single armored fortress in the sky. By 0845 hours, the vulgar vultures were on course, their 34 B-24 Liberators stacked into a flawless combat box and trailed by more than 200 additional bombers. Far to the north, the German air defense network was already awake. Along the Adriatic coast, radio intelligence stations eavesdropped on the Americans' famously casual radio chatter. Every call sign, every altitude report helped the Luftwaffe triangulate route, timing, and strength. And high over the Adriatic, unarmed P-38 weather scouts, a familiar prelude to major raids, confirmed for German analysts that the big bomb stream was bound for Austria. The alarm raced through a meticulously layered system. At the center sat Jagdkorps 1 in Braunschweig, the nerve center of the Reich's air defense. Responsibility for southern Germany and Austria fell to Jet Division 7, which began alerting every available interceptor wing. This wasn't a random scramble. Each local command post funneled climbing squadrons into precise ambush points where they could hit the bombers hardest and disappear before Allied escorts closed in. Among the first to respond were veterans of 2nd WWII 27 Africa, hardened in the deserts of North Africa, now flying from Wiesbaden. They came in Messerschmitt Me-109G Gustavs, each bristling with a hub-mounted 30mm Mk-108 cannon, twin 13mm machine guns, and, if fitted with underwing gondolas, extra 20mm or 30mm firepower. Beside them, the 2nd JG-77 Ace of Hearts, operating off a grassy field at Canino in Italy, climbed fast to meet the Americans. From Wels, Austria, the Wasps of 2nd ZG-1 prepared a different sting. Their twin-engined Me-110G2 heavy fighters were slower but terrifying. They could lob 210mm rockets into bomber boxes and follow with twin 30mm autocannon bursts that could shatter a 4-engine Liberator with just a handful of hits. By the time the Americans crossed the Adriatic, the Reich had assembled an armada of interceptors, 312 single-engine fighters and 62 twin-engine destroyers, a force that dwarfed the roughly 150 US P-47 and P-38 escorts scheduled to cover the raid. And German pilots often flew 2 sorties in a single morning, one on the inbound leg, another on the retreat. Adding to the danger, Steyr itself bristled with more than 100 heavy flak guns. The crews of 24 Flak Division is ready to raise a black, burning wall around the industrial city. The 455th pressed northward under a cloudless sky. At 10:20 hours now over Yugoslavia, 2 Liberators turned back with mechanical trouble, leaving 32 aircraft in the lead formation. 10 minutes later, near Novo Mesto, the first specks appeared on the horizon, Me-109S closing fast. At 10:45, as the formation neared Austria, Major Horace Lanford, Kuhl's co-pilot in the lead ship Best Wedo, heard the warning from the top turret gunner. 7 bandits, right flank. Lanford watched a disciplined enemy move. 7 Me-109s slid to the head of the column, wheeled as one, and came in 7 abreast on a firing run. Lanford grabbed the mic. "Red Dog 1, this is Large Cup 23. We are under attack by 7 Me-109s. Request assistance?" The reply came back in a slow southern drawl. "Walal, we're kind of tied up ourselves right now, but we'll send someone up as soon as we can." Moments later, a lone P-38 Lightning slashed into view, its turbo-supercharged engines screaming. The Messerschmitts broke off, but only temporarily. The sky ahead still swarmed with fighters, and the hardest part of the mission, the final climb towards Steyr's flak-ringed factories, was just beginning. The Austrian border loomed ahead as the vulgar vultures tightened their combat box. Beneath them, Valleys of dark green forests and white snowfields slid past like a map come alive. Above them, the air itself seemed to explode. As the bombers approached 15 miles west of Graz, enemy fighters struck in force. Group Intelligence Officer Major Alvin E. Coons later wrote, "The heaviest concentration of enemy fighters was encountered 15 miles west of Graz and continued the attack until the target area, Messerschmitt Me-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-19s ripped in from the sides. Twin-engine Me-110 destroyers closed from the rear, firing 210mm rockets that burst like black suns among the formation." Coons called these pilots very aggressive and experienced. At 1100 hours, the first B-24 fell. The Liberator Double Trouble, crewed by 2nd Lieutenant John H. Powers Jr.'s 740 Squadron team, was raked by cannon fire. Flames engulfed its left wing and number. 3-engine. Helpless crewmen watched as the aircraft rolled away in fire. 5 men managed to bail out and became prisoners of war. The other 5 never left the wreckage. 15 minutes later, Shoo Baby, 1st Lieutenant Willis J. Pardo's 742nd Squadron ship, lost its number. 4-engine and turned for home. For more than half an hour, it flew under constant attack until every .50 caliber round was spent. Pardo ordered a bailout. 5 airmen were captured. The others evaded with the help of Yugoslav partisans and returned to San Giovanni a month later. At 11:30 hours, disaster struck again. The B-24 Gremlins Gripe, flown by 1st Lieutenant Clyde P. Brunson of the 743rd Squadron, dropped behind the formation, its left wing and rudder aflame. Flight Officer Richard J. Haney, flying off Brunson's wing, recalled, "I then saw the ship blow up. 8 of Brunson's crew bailed out but were captured." German records credit Luftwaffe ace Captain Hans Remmer of JG-27 with the kill, his 27th and final victory. He would die the same day in combat with USP-38 Lightning escorts. Then came the city itself. Steyr's 24th Flak Division had prepared a nightmare. More than 100 heavy guns, 88s and 128s, ringed the industrial zone. When they opened up, the sky turned black with bursting shells. Tail Gunner Staff Sergeant Don Kaplanik of the 745th Squadron said the flak was so dense you could just get out and walk on it. Yet the vulgar vultures held formation. No B-24s were lost outright to flak, but 3 ships suffered severe damage and 4 more needed repairs before they could fly again. Through this chaos, Captain Jack Horner had to work a miracle of calm. His job, identify the target and feed precise data to the Norden bomb site, which would compute the exact release for the group's 10 500-pound bombs per aircraft. But the Daimler-Puch factory was hidden by a sudden cloud, and then Horner saw them. Several B-17 flying fortresses off course and directly below the bomb run. Dropping now would kill Americans. He keyed the interphone. No drop. Up in the cockpit, Lieutenant Colonel Kuhl faced a cruel dilemma. Turn back for another run and face the gauntlet again, or divert to a secondary target and risk wasting the mission? Kuhl's mind flashed to the intelligence briefing. The Steyr Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing plant, only 1 minute north on course 330, and the sky above it reported clear. Ball bearings were the secret pulse of every German engine and gearbox. Kuhl made his call. Come to course 330. We're bombing the ball-bearing plant. The formation wheeled toward the alternate target. At 11:40 hours, Horner steadied his sights and released. Almost 2,300 demolition bombs cascaded onto the Walzlagerwerke complex. Many direct hits were scored, an official 15th Air Force report would state, and a large explosion occurred, covering the plant with dense smoke. Major Coons later confirmed that only 43,000 of the plant's 116,000 square feet remained even partially intact. The bomb doors of the vulgar vultures slammed shut, but the mission was far from over. Even as the last bombs struck the Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing plant, the Luftwaffe refused to yield the skies over Steyr. At 11:45 hours, just 5 minutes after the drop, the B-24 Tallahassee Lassie of the 743rd Squadron took a fatal hit. Enemy gunfire ignited flames in the bomb bay and waist section. Witnesses watched as the stricken ship slid from formation, trailing smoke and fire. 4 crew members parachuted to the ground only to be captured. 6 never escaped the wreckage and were later found by German patrols. Now on the homeward leg, the formation finally met the cavalry. A squadron of P-38 Lightnings, turbocharged and long-legged, knifed through the cold Austrian sky. They drove at the German interceptors that had harried the bombers for more than an hour, scattering the Me-109s and twin-engine destroyers, and giving the weary gunners a brief chance to breathe. For most crews, the rest of the return flight would be routine. Long, cold, intense, but free of new attack. For one aircraft, however, the ordeal was just beginning. 20 minutes from Steyr, First Lieutenant William A. Arnold piloted the B-24 Turbo Colossus of the 743rd Squadron. Suddenly, a lone Me-109 burst through the escorts and lined up its shot. The top turret gunner, Technical Sergeant Roland R. Pete Keith, swung his twin-point .50 calibers and fired point blank. The Messerschmitt flamed out and fell, but not before its cannon shells found their mark. Arnold felt the shudder instantly. "Then we were hit," he later remembered. The number 4 engine flared into fire, and number 2 was damaged. The bomber sagged, bleeding speed, the rest of the group pulling away. The life expectancy of our aircraft in this situation could probably be measured in seconds, Arnold admitted. Co-pilot Second Lieutenant Richard Dusty Dunscombe wrestled with the extinguishers and killed the fire, but the Liberator was still sinking toward the jagged white Alps. Arnold ordered everything not bolted down jettisoned, the remaining bombs, waste guns, flak suits. Someone even threw out a parachute to save a few precious pounds. Every mile toward Italy was a test of calculation and nerve. For 6.5 endless hours after takeoff, Turbo Colossus limped home, finally touching down at San Giovanni with engines coughing and fuel gauges near empty. Arnold later said some of his crew were seen to kiss the ground the moment they climbed out. When the battered formation finally rolled onto Italian soil, the full price of mission number 18 came clear. The 455th Bomb Group lost 4 B-24 Liberators and 40 airmen over Steyr. 3 more aircraft were badly damaged and would be out of action for days. The group's gunners claimed 27 enemy aircraft destroyed and 17 probably destroyed. Figures later reduced by post-war research to only 7 confirmed German losses. A reminder of how chaotic air combat inflated victory counts on every side. Meanwhile, German fighter claims ran high in the opposite direction. They reported 16 B-17, 34 B-24, 4 P-38, and 1 P-47 shot down across the entire raid. In reality, the 15th Air Force lost 8 B-17s and 20 B-24s, with no escort fighters missing. Behind the grim numbers stood a strategic success. With almost 2,300 bombs dropped, the Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing factory was wrecked, crippling a vital link in the Reich's aircraft production chain. The sudden diversion ordered by Lieutenant Colonel Kuhl had turned what might have been a costly failure into a decisive blow against the Luftwaffe's industrial heart. When the 455th Bomb Group rolled its Liberators back onto the muddy runways of San Giovanni, the mission's immediate success was clear. For 4 aircraft and 40 men, the group had crippled the Steyr Walzlagerwerke ball-bearing works, a key hub of German aircraft production. Where once 116,000 square feet of assembly, testing, and packing floors had thrummed with precision machinery, only 43,000 square feet remained even partially intact, and much of that was wrecked inside. The Luftwaffe's supply of critical bearings had suffered a blow it could not easily replace. For the Allied planners of Operation Pointblank, this mattered enormously. Ball bearings were the quiet pulse of the war economy. Every engine, fighter, bomber, tank, or truck relied on its smooth rotation. By smashing the Steyr plant, the 15th Air Force tightened the vice on German industry at the very moment D-Day preparations demanded that the Luftwaffe remain grounded. The raid on April 2, 1944, proved that even after Point-Blank's official conclusion, the USAAF could strike deep into the Reich and land a crippling punch. But for the men of the vulgar vultures, celebration was brief. Almost before the oil on their engines cooled, a fresh order arrived. 28 B-24s to bomb rail yards in Budapest, Hungary, with takeoff scheduled for the early hours of April 3rd. On the ground, mechanics, armorers, and fuel crews, the unsung heroes of the 15th Air Force, worked through the night. They patched flak holes, replaced damaged control surfaces, refueled tanks, and rearmed bomb bays. In their hands lay the group's ability to fly again at dawn. For them, there was no rest, only the unending rhythm of maintenance and preparation. In recognition of their extraordinary performance at Steyr, the 455th Bomb Group received the first of 2 distinguished unit citations they would earn before war's end. This single raid became a defining chapter in a service record that spanned 15 months in Italy, during which the group flew 252 combat sorties and dropped 14,702 tons of bombs. But the record of courage came with a ledger of sacrifice. Across those 15 months, the group lost 118 aircraft to enemy action or accident. 147 airmen were killed, 268 were listed as missing, and 179 were taken prisoner. Each number represents a life lived at the edge of endurance and a family waiting for news that often never came. The 455th was one of many American heavy bomber groups that served from 1941 to 1945. But its story captures the essence of the air war over Europe. From the olive grove mud of San Giovanni to the precision required of Norden bombsight crews, to the deadly ballet of combat box formations, these airmen demonstrated the combination of technical mastery and raw courage on which Allied victory depended. Their B-24 Liberators, with a top speed of 290 miles per hour, a service ceiling of 28,000 feet, and a potential 5,000-pound bomb load, became more than machines. They were extensions of their crews, machines that demanded constant attention, but when flown well, could deliver devastating blows deep inside enemy territory. The April 2nd mission over Steyr endures as more than a footnote. It was a moment when split-second human judgment, the refusal to drop bombs on friendly aircraft, the quick pivot to a new target, altered the course of an entire day's battle. It demonstrated that victory in the air war was measured not only in tonnage and sorties, but also in the calm decisions made inside a shaking, flak-riddled cockpit. The vulgar vultures proved that determination, skill, and sacrifice could bend the trajectory of a world war. Their courage at 21,000 feet stands as a lasting tribute to the thousands of U.S. Army Air Force's crews who fought a harsh and unforgiving war in the frozen skies of Europe and helped bring history's deadliest conflict to an end. From the training fields of New Mexico to the fire-black skies of Steyr, the 455th Bomb Group wrote its chapter of World War II in sweat, steel, and steadfast resolve. A story of men who truly earned their name, the vulgar vultures, and helped win freedom at the highest cost.